The diamond engagement ring felt like a shackle around Marlene's finger as she stood frozen outside the bridal suite, her hand trembling on the door handle, while the unmistakable sound of her fiancé's voice groaned another woman's name, her maid of honor's name. Marlene Novak had arrived at the Grandmore Hotel at exactly 10 a.m., 3 hours before she was supposed to walk down the aisle to become Mrs. Bradley Stallone. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxury hotel's hallway, casting long shadows that seemed to mock the white garment bag she carried. She had come early to retrieve her grandmother's pearl necklace, a family heirloom she'd forgotten in the suite the night before during the rehearsal dinner. But now, standing outside the door she'd left cracked open, she heard everything with crystal clarity. God, Kira. Bradley's voice was thick with desire, a tone Marlene recognized but hadn't heard directed at her in months. You're incredible. I should have chosen you from the start. The responding giggle belonged unmistakably to Kira Ingrid, her best friend since college, the woman who had helped her select wedding flowers, taste test cakes, and had held her hand through every moment of wedding planning stress. Poor Marlene. Kira's voice dripped with mock sympathy. She actually thinks you love her. She's been so pathetically grateful that someone like you would even look at her. A basic event planner thinking she could hold the attention of Bradley Stallone. Marlene's hand moved silently to her phone, muscle memory guiding her fingers to the record button without looking. Her mother Celeste had always told her to document everything in business, but she never imagined she'd need to apply that advice to her wedding day. She was convenient, Bradley replied, and Marlene could hear the rustling of sheets. Her father's old patents were worth millions once I figured out how to modernize them. The marriage was just insurance to make sure I had legal claim to everything. But God, these past 8 months with you have been the real relationship. After today, we just have to play it smart for a year, maybe 2, then a quiet divorce, and I walk away with half her assets, plus what I've already extracted from her father's estate. 8 months, Kira laughed. She never suspected anything. Remember when I convinced her you were working late all those nights? She actually made you soup and asked me to deliver it to your office. We ate it in bed while laughing at her little notes. Marlene's free hand pressed against her mouth, stifling not a sob, but a sound of pure rage. 8 months. Her entire engagement had been a lie. Every moment Kira had spent helping her plan this wedding, she'd been sleeping with Bradley. What time is it? Bradley asked lazily. 10:15. I should get back to the bridal party suite. Marlene will be arriving soon to get ready, and I need to be there to play the dutiful maid of honor one last time. 3 more hours of this charade, Bradley sighed, then a lifetime of wealth. Her mother tried to warn her about me, you know. That old woman saw right through me, but Marlene was so desperate to prove Mommy wrong about her choices, it made her even easier to manipulate. Celeste Novak is nobody's fool, Kira agreed, but Marlene has spent so long trying to step out of her mother's shadow that she ignored every red flag. Remember when Celeste hired that private investigator? Marlene actually defended you and cut her mother off for 2 months. Marlene's mind raced. Her mother had hired an investigator. She remembered the fight, remembered accusing her mother of trying to sabotage her happiness out of jealousy. She had thrown her mother's loneliness in her face, said cruel things about how, just because Celeste's marriage had failed, didn't mean Marlene's would too. The investigator didn't find anything anyway, Bradley boasted. I'm too careful. 10 years of this game and no one's ever caught me. First with Jennifer in Seattle, then Amanda in Portland, now Marlene. Each one bigger than the last. After I milk Marlene's connections and patents dry, I'm thinking international. Maybe London. What happened to Jennifer and Amanda again? Kira asked with dark curiosity. Jennifer had that unfortunate car accident when she started getting suspicious. Amanda's mental breakdown was tragic, really. No one believes a woman in a psychiatric ward when she claims her ex-boyfriend stole her company. As for Marlene... Bradley paused, and his voice turned cold. Well, successful black women have so much stress these days. Who knows what might happen in a year or two? The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Marlene pulled her phone closer, ensuring every word was captured. Her hand was steady now, her mind clear. This wasn't just betrayal, it was conspiracy. This wasn't just heartbreak, it was attempted theft and possibly planned murder. "I love how evil you are," Kira purred. "It's what attracted me to you at their engagement party. The way you looked at her like she was just a chess piece while giving that touching speech about love." "Get dressed," Bradley commanded. "We need to be careful today. Marlene's cousin Amara is a photographer, and she's been documenting everything for some wedding album. Keep your distance from me during the ceremony." "Please," Kira scoffed. "I've been playing this role perfectly. I'll even cry during the vows. Real tears too, thinking about how in a few years, all of this will be ours." Marlene backed away from the door silently, her designer heels making no sound on the plush carpet. She moved with the same precision she used when orchestrating elaborate events, every motion calculated and purposeful. Once she reached the stairwell, she ran, not in panic, but with determination, taking the stairs two at a time until she reached the parking garage. Only when she was safely in her white Mercedes, doors locked, did she allow herself a moment to process what she'd heard. Her fiancé was a serial predator who targeted successful women. Her best friend had been sleeping with him for 8 months. They planned to steal everything from her and possibly kill her. But worse than all of that was the realization that her mother had been right. Marlene pulled out her phone and scrolled to her mother's number. Celeste answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. "Marlene, aren't you supposed to be getting ready?" "Mom," Marlene's voice was steady, controlled. "Execute the Westbrook plan now." There was a pause. Then Celeste's voice came through sharp and clear. "You found out everything. I have it all recorded. Bradley and Kira, Mom, 8 months. He mentioned others, Jennifer in Seattle, Amanda in Portland. He called them his game. He threatened." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Where are you?" "Parking garage. Safe. Mom, I'm so sorry. You tried to warn me and I—" "Stop," Celeste commanded, with the same tone that had guided Marlene through childhood, scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks. "You listen to me, baby girl. You are going to drive to the Starbucks on 5th Street. Donovan Westbrook is already there with the documents I've been preparing for 6 months. You're going to review everything, then you're going to put on that wedding dress, and you're going to walk down that aisle." "Mom, I can't marry him." "You're not going to marry him. You're going to destroy him, in front of everyone who matters in his world. The Westbrook plan, remember? I've known this day might come since I met that hollow-eyed snake. Donovan's family has their own history with the Stallones. His father was Bradley's father's first business partner until Sterling Stallone destroyed him. Donovan's been building a case for years. We just needed proof of Bradley's intentions with you. The investigator you hired found enough to worry me, but not enough to convince you. So I've been preparing. Every document, every business dealing, every woman Bradley's hurt. Donovan's been tracking it all. He's an investment banker now, knows everyone on Wall Street. Bradley's investors will all be at that wedding, baby, and they're going to learn exactly who they've been funding." Marlene closed her eyes, feeling the rage transform into something colder, more purposeful. 3 hours until the ceremony. 3 hours to prepare for the performance of your lifetime. Can you do it? Marlene thought of Bradley's smug voice, of Kira's betrayal, of 8 months of lies. She thought of Jennifer and Amanda, women she'd never met but who deserved justice. She thought of her father's patents, his legacy being stolen by a man who planned to discard her like trash. "I can do it." "That's my girl. Donovan will explain everything." "And Marlene, wear the red lipstick, the one I bought you that you said was too bold. Today, you're not just a bride, you're a warrior." Marlene ended the call and started the engine. As she drove toward 5th Street, she glanced at herself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the naive bride who'd walked into that hotel this morning. This was someone else entirely. Someone who understood that sometimes the best revenge wasn't served cold. It was served in front of 300 wedding guests, captured in high definition by her cousin's camera, and executed with a smile that would haunt Bradley Stallone for the rest of his life. The wedding was in 3 hours. She had a performance to prepare. Chapter 2. The Wedding. Devastation. The wedding march began to play, but to Marlene's ears, it sounded less like a celebration and more like a funeral dirge. Bradley Stallone's funeral, though he didn't know it yet. 3 hours had passed since the discovery that shattered her world and rebuilt it in the same morning. The Starbucks meeting with Donovan Westbrook had been a revelation. The man her mother had tried to introduce her to 2 years ago sat across from her with boxes of evidence, his blue eyes holding none of the hollow charm she'd grown accustomed to with Bradley. Instead, there was quiet determination and a shared understanding of what it meant to be wronged by the Stallone family. "Your mother is remarkable," Donovan had said, sliding a folder across the table. "She came to me 6 months ago with suspicions. My private investigators have been tracking Bradley ever since. Every transaction, every meeting, every woman he's destroyed. The documents were damning: shell companies, fraudulent contracts, falsified financial statements that had lured investors into Bradley's web. But more than that, there were police reports from Jennifer's accident, psychiatric evaluation records from Amanda's breakdown, and a pattern so clear it might as well have been written in blood." Now, standing at the entrance of the Grandmore Hotel's grand ballroom, Marlene wore her grandmother's pearl necklace like armor. The $10,000 Vera Wang dress she'd agonized over for months felt like a costume for the greatest performance of her life. Her cousin Amara stood nearby with her camera, having been briefed on exactly what to capture and when to display it on the massive screens meant for the reception slideshow. "You look beautiful," Celeste whispered beside her, squeezing her daughter's hand. Her mother wore elegant navy blue, but Marlene noticed the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the way she surveyed the room like a general before battle. "Donovan is in position. The FBI agents are outside. Bradley's investors are all here. The Harrisburgs, the Chens, the Williamses. Sterling Stallone is in the front row, looking smug. And Kira, standing at the altar in that champagne dress you bought her, looking perfectly innocent. She's been crying happy tears and telling everyone how perfect you and Bradley are together." Marlene's red lips, the bold shade her mother had insisted upon, curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The music swelled, and 300 heads turned to watch Marlene begin her walk. She moved with deliberate grace, making eye contact with the guests, many of whom were Bradley's business associates. She saw Garrison Pike, the private investigator, dressed as a guest in the 5th row. She spotted Eleanor Westbrook, Donovan's mother, seated strategically near the projection equipment. Bradley stood at the altar in his custom Italian suit, his smile broad and confident. He believed he'd won. 8 months of deception, and here was his prize walking toward him. Beside him, his groomsmen looked appropriately formal, unaware they were standing next to a monster. Kira stood to the left, tissue in hand, dabbing at her eyes. The performance of a lifetime indeed, but not the one she'd planned. As Marlene approached, she heard whispers of admiration from the crowd. "Stunning," someone murmured. "Bradley's so lucky," another voice added. If only they knew that luck had nothing to do with Bradley's choices. She reached the altar and handed her bouquet to Kira, looking directly into the eyes of the woman who'd betrayed her. Kira smiled warmly, playing her part, but Marlene caught the flash of triumph underneath. In 3 hours, Kira expected to have won. She'd stood by while Marlene got ready, helped her with her veil, even whispered, "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," while knowing she'd been in Bradley's bed that very morning. The officiant, Reverend Marcus Thompson, began the ceremony with traditional words about love and commitment. Marlene barely heard them. She was counting down, waiting for the moment. Bradley took her hands, his touch making her skin crawl, but she maintained her composure. She'd learned something valuable today. She was a better actress than either of them. "Bradley and Marlene have written their own vows," Reverend Thompson announced. Bradley went first, his voice carrying across the ballroom with practiced sincerity. "Marlene, from the moment I met you, I knew you were special. Your intelligence, your grace, your beautiful spirit, they all captivated me. You've brought such value to my life." He emphasized the word value in a way that would have seemed romantic to the crowd but made Marlene's stomach turn, knowing what he really meant. "I promise to cherish you, to build an empire with you, and to make sure our future is everything we've dreamed of." The crowd sighed at the apparent romance. Sterling Stallone nodded approvingly at his son's performance. Kira wiped away another fake tear. "Marlene," the Reverend prompted. She looked at Bradley, then turned slightly to address the crowd, her voice clear and strong. "Bradley, you've taught me so much about the true nature of love and trust. Today, I want to give you something that reflects the full truth of what we have together." Bradley's smile flickered slightly at her deviation from the vows they'd rehearsed, but he maintained his composure. Marlene continued, "But first, I think everyone here should understand the complete picture of our relationship." She raised her hand, a signal to Amara. The massive screens meant for the reception suddenly came to life, but instead of the romantic slideshow of their courtship, the audio from Marlene's recording filled the ballroom. She was convenient. Her father's old patents were worth millions once I figured out how to modernize them. The marriage was just insurance. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, chairs scraping as people stood. Bradley's face went white, then red. "What is this? Turn it off!" But the recording continued. Kira's voice filled the room. 8 months. She never suspected anything. All eyes turned to the maid of honor, who stood frozen, her fake tears replaced by real terror. "This is fake," Bradley shouted, but his voice was drowned out by his own recorded words about Jennifer and Amanda, about his plans for Marlene. Marlene stood perfectly still in the eye of the storm, her red lips maintaining that same cold smile. She waited until the recording reached Bradley's threat about successful black women and their stress, the implication of planned murder hanging in the air like poison. "Turn it off!" Sterling Stallone roared, standing from his seat, but no one moved to help him. When the recording ended, the screens changed to documents, financial records, falsified contracts, proof of embezzlement and fraud. Donovan Westbrook stood from his position in the third row, his voice carrying with authority. "My name is Donovan Westbrook. I'm an investment banker with Morrison & Associates. The SEC has been notified of Bradley Stallone's extensive fraud. The FBI is currently outside, waiting to arrest him for conspiracy, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder based on the evidence you've just heard and seen." The investors Bradley had spent years cultivating began pulling out their phones, calling their lawyers, their accountants, anyone who could help them distance themselves from the collapse they saw coming. The Harrisburgs were already heading for the exit. The Chens looked murderous. The Williamses were on the phone with their legal team. "You bitch!" Bradley lunged toward Marlene, but Garrison Pike and 2 other men who revealed themselves as undercover FBI agents stepped forward, blocking him. "Bradley Stallone," Agent Harrison announced, "you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." "This is entrapment," Bradley screamed as they cuffed him. "She set me up. Kira, tell them." But Kira had collapsed into a chair, sobbing real tears now as she realized the depth of her mistake. 8 months of sneaking around, and for what? to be exposed in front of everyone who mattered in their social circle, to be known forever as the maid of honor who betrayed the bride. Sterling Stallone approached Marlene, his face purple with rage. "You've destroyed my family. You've destroyed everything." "No," Celeste stepped forward, positioning herself between Sterling and her daughter. "Your son destroyed himself the moment he decided to prey on innocent women. Jennifer Huang's family sends their regards, by the way. They're very interested in reopening the investigation into her death." Sterling's face went from purple to grey. He looked at his son being led away in handcuffs, then at the investors fleeing the ballroom, their faith in the Stallone empire shattered in minutes. Marlene finally moved, walking slowly to where Kira sat crying. She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with her former friend. 8 months, Marlene said quietly, but her voice carried in the now hushed ballroom. 8 months of lies. Of helping me plan this wedding while sleeping with my fiancé. Of pretending to be my sister while plotting to steal my life. "Marlene, You're pregnant, aren't you?" Marlene asked, having noticed the subtle signs during the morning preparation. "That's why you were so confident. You thought you'd won the ultimate prize." Kira's sobs intensified, confirming what Marlene suspected. "Well, congratulations." Marlene stood, smoothing her wedding dress. "You're having the baby of a man who's going to federal prison, a man who just lost everything, his money, his reputation, his freedom. You wanted Bradley Stallone? You got him." She turned to address the remaining guests, many recording on their phones, ensuring this moment would live forever on social media. "I apologize for the disruption to what you expected to be a celebration, but I couldn't in good conscience let Bradley Stallone victimize another woman. The reception has been paid for, so please enjoy the food and drinks. Consider it a celebration of justice instead of matrimony." As she walked back down the aisle, alone this time but somehow stronger, Marlene heard the whispers following her. But they weren't whispers of pity or scandal. They were whispers of awe. Did you see how she handled that? She knew the whole time and still walked down that aisle. That took incredible courage. Donovan Westbrook caught her eye as she passed his row. He nodded once, respectfully, then returned his attention to his phone where he was coordinating with the SEC to freeze Bradley's assets before Sterling could hide them. At the ballroom entrance, Celeste waited with Marlene's coat and car keys. "How do you feel, baby?" her mother asked. Marlene considered the question. Her wedding was destroyed. Her fiancé was being arrested. Her best friend had betrayed her. By all accounts, she should be devastated. Instead, she felt free. "Like I just saved my own life," Marlene replied, linking arms with her mother. "And possibly the lives of his future victims." As they walked toward the exit, they could hear Bradley still screaming from the police car outside, Kira's sobs from inside, and Sterling Stallone on his phone, desperately trying to salvage something from the wreckage. The wedding that was supposed to mark the beginning of Marlene's imprisonment had instead become her liberation, and it was only the beginning. Chapter 3. The immediate aftermath. 7 days had passed since the wedding that broke the internet, and Marlene discovered that viral fame tasted nothing like she'd imagined. It was both bitter and intoxicating, like expensive champagne that had been left open too long. The video of Bradley's arrest at the altar had garnered 12 million views across various social media platforms. Someone had set it to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, turning her personal catastrophe into a cultural moment. Runaway Bride Revenge was trending globally. Talk show hosts were dissecting her every move. Legal experts were debating the admissibility of her recording on cable news. And somewhere in federal holding, Bradley Stallone was learning what it meant to lose everything in the span of 15 minutes. Marlene sat in her corner office at Novak Events, the company she'd built from nothing while Bradley had been slowly siphoning off her father's intellectual property. The morning sun cast geometric patterns across her desk, where three things demanded her attention: a cease and desist letter from Sterling Stallone's attorneys, a pregnancy test that Kira had mailed to her with a desperate note, and a simple white business card from Donovan Westbrook. Her assistant, Waverly Durand, knocked before entering with a stack of messages. "The phone hasn't stopped ringing," Waverly said, her usually cheerful demeanor replaced with protective concern. 63 interview requests, including Oprah's people, 42 new client inquiries. Apparently everyone wants the event planner who turned her wedding into the most watched revenge story of the year. And... She hesitated. "What is it, Waverly?" "Kira's here. She's been sitting in the lobby for 3 hours. Security won't let her up without your permission, but she won't leave." Marlene set down her coffee. She'd switched from her usual sweet cream to black, finding that she preferred the bitter truth of things lately. "What does she look like?" "Destroyed," Waverly said simply. "No makeup, sweatpants, her roots are showing. She's holding a Hermes bag like it's a life preserver, the same bag you gave her for her birthday last year." The knife of betrayal twisted fresh. That bag had cost Marlene $3,000, purchased during a time when she'd believed Kira's friendship was real. Now it was just another prop in a performance that had lasted 8 months. "Send her away," Marlene decided, then reconsidered. "No, wait. Send her up, but have security stay close." Waverly looked concerned. "Are you sure? I need to look her in the eye one more time. I need to understand how someone I loved like a sister could do this to me." 5 minutes later, Kira Ingrid entered the office, and Waverly hadn't exaggerated. The woman who'd always been impeccably styled looked like she'd aged 5 years in 7 days. Her blonde hair hung limp, her designer clothes had been replaced with wrinkled athletic wear, and her eyes were swollen from crying. "Marlene," she started, her voice cracking. "Sit," Marlene commanded, remaining behind her desk. The power dynamic was clear. This wasn't a conversation between friends. This was a reckoning. Kira sank into the chair, clutching the Hermes bag. "I know you hate me." "Hate requires emotion," Marlene interrupted. "What I feel for you is nothing. You're a void where a friend used to be. But I am curious about one thing. Why? You had everything. A successful career, a trust fund, men who wanted you. Why did you need to take mine?" Kira's laugh was bitter. "You really don't know, do you? You never saw it." "Saw what?" "How perfect your life was. How everyone loved you without you even trying. Your mother who would die for you. Your business that succeeded because of talent, not family money. Men who saw you as a person, not just a bank account." Kira's voice turned venomous. "Do you know what it's like to be the pretty white girl who's supposed to have everything handed to her, only to watch her black best friend surpass her in every way that mattered?" Marlene felt the words hit her like physical blows. "So you decided to destroy me out of jealousy?" "Bradley approached me first," Kira admitted. "At your engagement party. He said he could tell I was in love with you, that I wanted what you had. He was wrong about the first part, but right about the second. He offered me a deal, help him get your father's patents and your business connections, and he'd make sure I was taken care of when he divorced you. And you just agreed." "I was drunk on the attention. Bradley Stallone wanting me, choosing me over you. Every time we were together, he'd tell me how much better I was than you, how you were boring, predictable, how he had to force himself to touch you." Kira's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I know now he was lying, manipulating me just like he manipulated you. But for 8 months, I felt like I was winning something. And now I'm pregnant with the child of a man facing 25 to life. My trust fund has been frozen because my father thinks I'm a liability to the family name. My social media is full of death threats. I can't get a job because I'm the most hated woman in America after that wedding video went viral. I destroyed my life to destroy yours, And you're still standing while I'm... She gestured at herself helplessly. Marlene studied the woman she'd once considered her sister. She thought of the sleepovers, the shared dreams, the promises they'd made to be each other's maids of honor, all of it tainted now, poisoned by betrayal. "You're pregnant," Marlene stated, rather than asked. 7 weeks. I found out the day before your wedding. I thought... Kira laughed bitterly. I thought it meant I'd won, that I'd have Bradley's baby, his money, his name eventually. I was going to be the second Mrs. Stallone after he got rid of you. He would have gotten rid of you too, Marlene said quietly. Jennifer Huang thought she was special. Amanda Morrison thought she was different. You would have been just another casualty in Bradley's game. I know that now. Kira reached into the Hermes bag and pulled out a flash drive. This is everything. Every text, every email, every recorded conversation between Bradley and me. My lawyers say it could help strengthen the case against him, maybe get him life without parole. Marlene took the drive, turning it over in her fingers. Why give this to me? Because I owe you that much, and because... Kira stood, knowing the conversation was over. Because I need you to know that somewhere under all the jealousy and bad decisions, I did love you. It just wasn't enough to stop me from destroying us both. After Kira left, Marlene sat alone in her office, holding the flash drive. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then saw the preview. This is Donovan Westbrook. Your mother gave me your number. She opened the full message. I wanted to check in after the week you've had. The SEC has frozen all of Bradley's assets thanks to the evidence we provided. Sterling is under investigation. You should know you're safe now. If you need anything, I'm here, not as someone your mother chose, but as someone who admires your courage. DW. Marlene read the message 3 times. There was something different about Donovan's approach. He wasn't trying to save her or fix her. He was simply offering support while acknowledging her strength. Before she could respond, Waverly burst in. You need to see this. Bradley's on the news. She turned on the office television to find Bradley in an orange jumpsuit, being interviewed from jail. His former Polish was gone, replaced by desperation and rage. She entrapped me, he was saying. Marlene Novak planned this whole thing. She and her mother, they've been setting me up from the beginning. I loved her. I was going to give her everything, and she destroyed me for money and fame. The interviewer pushed back. But what about the recording? Your own words about the other women? Taken out of context, edited. I want America to know that Marlene Novak is not the hero you think she is. She's a calculating woman who destroyed a good man because he cheated. Every man cheats. It doesn't mean I deserved this. Marlene watched Bradley's meltdown with clinical detachment. This was who he really was, not the charming millionaire or the smooth manipulator, but a pathetic narcissist who couldn't accept responsibility for his own actions. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Are you watching? Celeste asked. Unfortunately. Don't let it bother you, baby. He's desperate. The FBI found evidence of 3 more victims in other states. He's going away for a long time. I know. Kira was just here. There was a pause. And? She gave me evidence that will help the case. She's pregnant, Mom, with Bradley's baby. Celeste sighed. That poor, stupid girl, though I suppose that's harsh. Bradley was good at what he did. He almost fooled you, and you're no fool. He did fool me, Marlene admitted. For months, I thought I loved him. No, baby. You loved who you thought he was. There's a difference. The real Bradley never existed. It was just a performance. After ending the call, Marlene looked again at Donovan's text. She thought about her mother's words, about performances and reality. She thought about Bradley in his orange jumpsuit, still performing even now. And she thought about Donovan, who had helped her without asking for anything in return, who had called her brave instead of broken. She typed back, "Thank you for everything. The SEC move was brilliant. Would you like to get coffee tomorrow? Not because my mother thinks we should, but because I'd like to thank you properly. MN." His response came quickly. "I know a place that serves the strongest coffee in the city. You seem like someone who appreciates strength. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Marlene smiled. Not the cold smile she'd worn at her destroyed wedding, but something softer, more genuine. Perfect. As she prepared to leave the office, one more text came through, this time from Amara. "Cousin, you're not going to believe this. A publisher wants to offer you $1 million book deal for your story. Netflix is interested in the rights. You're about to get paid for your pain." Marlene looked out her office window at the city below, at all the people living their lives, unaware that sometimes the worst day of your life could become the beginning of something better. Bradley had tried to steal her father's legacy, her future, her life. Instead, he'd given her something more valuable, the knowledge of her own strength and the ability to recognize real from fake, in business and in love. The aftermath of disaster, she was learning, could be the foundation for something extraordinary. Chapter 4. The Mother's Revelation. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, Marlene stood in her childhood home's kitchen, watching her mother prepare Sunday dinner with the same meticulous care she'd apparently used to investigate Bradley Stallone for the past 2 years. The familiar scent of Celeste's famous pot roast filled the air, but the comfort food couldn't soften the weight of the conversation they were about to have. On the kitchen table sat 2 boxes of documents, 3 photo albums, and a laptop displaying financial records that went back a decade. This wasn't just Sunday dinner, it was a war room disguised as a family meal. "You've been investigating Bradley for 2 years, Marlene asked, still processing what her mother had revealed when she'd invited her over. 2 years, Mom." Celeste didn't look up from the carrots she was chopping with surgical precision. 26 months, to be exact. Since the day you first mentioned his name at Thanksgiving dinner. You said you'd met someone special at the Harrison Charity Gala. The way you described him, too perfect, too smooth, too interested, too fast. It set off every alarm in my head. "And you didn't think to tell me?" Now Celeste did look up, her eyes holding the same strength that had carried them through Marlene's father's death, through building a life as a single black mother in a world that expected her to fail. "I tried, baby. Remember Christmas that year? I asked about his family, his business, his past relationships. You accused me of interrogating him." Marlene remembered. She'd been so angry, so convinced her mother was trying to sabotage her happiness. "You hired a private investigator, Garrison Pike, best in the business. Cost me a fortune, but you're worth every penny." Celeste moved to the stove, stirring the gravy with practiced motions. He found the patterns first. Bradley's targeting of successful women of color, specifically those with inherited intellectual property or family businesses. "You weren't random, Marlene. You were selected." Selected, the word tasted bitter. Like I was an item on a menu. "Your father's medical device patents were worth approximately $12 million if properly developed. Bradley had the connections to bring them to market, but he needed legal claim to them. Marriage was the cleanest way." Marlene sank into the kitchen chair she'd sat in as a child, where her mother had helped her with homework and listened to her teenage heartbreaks. How did Donovan Westbrook get involved? Celeste's expression softened slightly. "That's a longer story. Set the table while I tell it." As Marlene laid out her grandmother's china, another family legacy Bradley would have stolen, her mother began. "Eleanor Westbrook and I met at a medical conference 15 years ago. Your father was presenting his cardiac device innovations, and Eleanor's husband, James, was looking for investment opportunities. They became partners, friends even. When James died in that car accident 5 years ago, the investigation was rushed, closed too quickly. The Stallone family had just bought out his company in what everyone called a hostile takeover, but James's death meant they got it for pennies on the dollar. You think Sterling Stallone killed James Westbrook? I think the Stallones have a pattern of convenient accidents, but Eleanor and I could never prove it. Then, 2 years ago, at another medical conference, Eleanor introduced me to her son. Donovan had just made partner at his investment firm, and he'd been quietly investigating his father's death and the Stallones' business practices. Marlene paused in folding napkins. You've been planning this for 2 years? With Donovan? Not planning exactly. Preparing. When I realized Bradley was serious about you, that he was going to propose, Eleanor and I knew we needed to be ready. Donovan had already connected Bradley to Jennifer Huang's death in Seattle and Amanda Morrison's breakdown in Portland. But we needed proof of intent, proof of the pattern. So Donovan getting involved at the wedding. He was always going to be there. He had a +1 invitation through the Westbrook family's connection to the Stallones' business circle. The plan was for him to document everything, to be a witness. We didn't know about Kira. That was... Celeste's composure cracked slightly. That almost broke my heart more than Bradley. That girl ate at this table. I taught her how to make my sweet potato pie. The doorbell rang before Marlene could respond. Celeste glanced at the clock. That'll be Donovan. I invited him to dinner. Mom, don't mom me. That young man has been protecting you for 2 years without you knowing it. The least we can do is feed him. Donovan Westbrook stood on the porch in casual clothes, dark jeans and a button-down shirt, looking nothing like the sharp-suited investment banker from the wedding. He held a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of sunflowers. Mrs. Novak, he said warmly, handing her the flowers. Thank you for the invitation. Celeste, please, we're past formalities. She turned to Marlene. Doesn't he clean up nice outside of crisis mode? Marlene felt heat rise to her cheeks. 3 coffee dates in the past 2 weeks had shown her that Donovan was everything Bradley pretended to be. Intelligent, successful, genuinely interested in her thoughts rather than her assets. But she was still raw, still processing the betrayal, still learning to trust her own judgment again. Hi, she managed. Hi, he replied, his smile gentle. Your mother promised me the best pot roast in Atlanta. I'm hoping she wasn't exaggerating. Dinner started quietly, but Celeste had a gift for drawing people out. Soon Donovan was sharing stories about his father, about discovering the truth behind his death, about the quiet rage that had driven him to succeed in the financial world, just to have the power to take down the Stallones. I watched them for years, he admitted, cutting into his pot roast. Sterling and Bradley, operating like kings in their glass tower. They destroyed my family, and I wanted nothing more than revenge. Then Celeste contacted me, told me about you, and I realized something. What? Marlene asked. That revenge without purpose is just destruction, but stopping them from hurting other families, other daughters, that's justice. Celeste nodded approvingly. The boy has wisdom beyond his years. The boy is 31, Mrs. Novak. Celeste, Donovan corrected with a laugh. As they moved to dessert, Celeste's famous peach cobbler, Marlene found herself studying Donovan when he wasn't looking. He helped clear plates without being asked, complimented her mother's cooking with specific details that showed he was paying attention, and when he caught her watching him, he didn't smirk or preen like Bradley would have. He simply smiled and continued his conversation with Celeste about jazz music. I should show you something, Celeste said suddenly, rising from the table. She returned with one of the photo albums. This was taken 3 years ago. The photo showed a charity gala, and in the background, barely visible, were Marlene and Donovan. They were at separate tables, unaware of each other's existence, but the camera had captured them both in the same frame. The Healthcare Heroes Gala. Donovan recognized it immediately. My mother insisted I attend. I was there representing Novak Events, Marlene remembered. We organized the silent auction. You were wearing a green dress, Donovan said quietly. I remember because you outbid me on the signed Miles Davis album. I was annoyed until I saw how happy you were to win it. Marlene stared at him. You remember that? I remember thinking anyone who fought that hard for jazz vinyl was someone worth knowing. But then Bradley swooped in and... He shrugged. Timing is everything. Celeste excused herself to the kitchen, leaving them alone with the weight of possibility. Were you watching me for 2 years? Marlene asked, like some kind of guardian angel assigned by our mothers. No, Donovan said firmly. I was watching Bradley. You were just there, bright and talented and kind, wasted on someone who saw you as a mark. It killed me to watch, but I couldn't interfere without proof. The one time I tried to warn you... The investment seminar, Marlene breathed, remembering suddenly. You told me to be careful with joint ventures, to protect my individual assets. Bradley was furious. He said you were trying to undermine him. I was, just not for the reasons he thought. They sat in silence for a moment, the ghost of Bradley hanging between them like a shadow that needed exorcising. I'm not ready, Marlene said quietly, for anything beyond friendship. I don't trust my judgment. I chose Bradley. I chose Kira. I'm apparently terrible at seeing people clearly. You're not, Donovan disagreed. You see the best in people. That's not a flaw, it's a gift. Bradley and Kira took advantage of that gift, but it doesn't make you wrong for having it. How can you be so sure? Because you saw through them eventually, because when you discovered the truth you didn't collapse, you conquered, because you're here, having dinner, starting to rebuild instead of hiding. He stood to leave, and because your mother, who is possibly the smartest woman I've ever met, raised you. You have her strength, Marlene. You just needed a reason to use it. At the door, he turned back. I know you're not ready for anything beyond friendship. I'm not asking for more. But I want you to know that I'll be here when you are ready, whether that's 6 months or 6 years from now. Some things are worth waiting for. After he left, Marlene helped her mother with dishes, both of them quiet in the comfortable way of family. You've been planning this, Marlene said finally. Not just the investigation, but Donovan and me. Celeste dried a plate thoughtfully. I've been hoping. There's a difference. I hoped you'd see through Bradley. I hoped you'd be strong enough to survive if you didn't. And I hoped that when the dust settled, you'd see what I saw the first time Eleanor showed me a picture of her son, a good man who would appreciate your worth without trying to steal it. And if I never see it, if I decide to be alone, then you'll be alone with my full support. But baby, Celeste turned to face her daughter, don't let Bradley's betrayal rob you of more than he's already taken. Don't let him take your ability to love and be loved. That would be the real tragedy. Later that night, Marlene sat in her apartment, looking at the flash drive Kira had given her. Tomorrow, she would hand it over to the FBI, adding more nails to Bradley's legal coffin. But tonight, she allowed herself to think about green dresses and jazz albums, about men who remembered small details from 3 years ago, about mothers who planned for contingencies with the strategy of generals and the love of saints. Her phone buzzed with a text from Donovan. Thank your mother for dinner. Best pot roast in Atlanta wasn't an exaggeration. Also, I'm going to the jazz festival next weekend. If you're interested in going as friends who both appreciate Miles Davis, I have an extra ticket. No pressure. D.W. Marlene found herself smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. She typed back, friends who appreciate jazz sounds perfect, but I'm buying the drinks. I owe you more than I can ever repay. His response was immediate. You owe me nothing. But I'll let you buy the first round if it makes you feel better. Fair warning, though, I've been known to discuss Charlie Parker for hours. As she set down her phone, Marlene realized her mother had been right about something else. Bradley hadn't broken her. He'd revealed her strength, and maybe, just maybe, he'd cleared the way for something real. Chapter 5. Bradley's desperation. The sound of breaking glass shattered the pre-dawn quiet of Marlene's office building, and she knew before security called that Bradley had finally snapped. 6 weeks of legal proceedings, frozen assets, and public humiliation had transformed him from calculating predator to desperate animal. Marlene stood in her office doorway at 5:47 a.m., surveying the destruction. Her desk had been overturned, client files scattered like confetti across the floor, and sprayed across the wall in red paint were the words, "You destroyed me." But it was what lay in the center of the chaos that made her blood run cold. Her father's framed medical degree, the glass shattered, a knife driven through his name. "Don't touch anything," Detective Harbour instructed, though Marlene had no intention of disturbing what was clearly a crime scene. "How did he get in?" "He must still have had his keycard from when we were together," Marlene realized with disgust. "I gave him access because he said he wanted to surprise me with late-night dinners when I worked overtime." "Romantic," the detective said dryly, photographing the knife. "Where were you last night?" "Home, asleep. My doorman can verify I didn't leave the building after 9 p.m. Detective Harbour, a black woman in her 40s who looked like she'd seen too much to be surprised by anything, nodded. "And Bradley's out on bail. His father posted $2 million. The ankle monitor was supposed to track him, keep him away from me." Marlene gestured at the destruction. "So much for that." Her phone buzzed. Celeste calling, then Donovan, then Amara. Bad news traveled fast in the digital age, and someone had already posted photos of the police cars outside her building on social media. "Ma'am?" A younger officer approached with an evidence bag. "We found this in the bathroom. Thought you should see it." Inside the bag was a pregnancy test, positive, with a note. "This could have been ours. B." Marlene's stomach turned. The pregnancy test wasn't hers, which meant Bradley had either stolen it from Kira or bought one to stage this scene. Either way, the manipulation was clear. He was trying to craft a narrative where she'd destroyed their family, their future children, their perfect life. "He's building a defense," Detective Harbour observed. "Crime of passion, broken man driven to extremes by a cruel woman. I've seen it before." "Will it work?" "Not with his history, but he's desperate enough to try anything." The detective's phone rang. She answered, her face growing grim. "There's been another incident. Kira Ingrid's apartment. Can you come with me?" The drive to Kira's luxury high-rise took 20 minutes, during which Marlene learned from Donovan's texts that Bradley had also sent threatening emails to every major client of Novak Events, claiming Marlene had stolen trade secrets from him. The man was scorching earth, trying to destroy everything she'd built. Kira's apartment door stood open, police tape already being strung across the entrance. Inside, Marlene could see more destruction, but this had a different quality, less rage, more systematic. Every piece of jewelry Marlene had ever given Kira had been laid out on the bed, each one broken or bent beyond repair. "Where is she?" Marlene asked. "Hospital," Detective Harbour replied. "She's fine physically, just shaken. She was at her mother's house in Buckhead when this happened. But he left her something too." The detective showed Marlene photos on her phone, written on Kira's bathroom mirror in lipstick, "Traitor whores get what they deserve." "He blames her for cooperating with the FBI," Marlene understood. "The flash drive she gave me helped build their case." "She's requesting a restraining order. Says she's scared for her life and the babies." Marlene felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for Kira. Whatever else she'd done, she didn't deserve to be terrorized by the man who'd manipulated them both. Her phone rang. Waverly, nearly hysterical. "Marlene, you need to get back here. Bradley's here in the lobby with reporters. He's giving some kind of press conference." Detective Harbour drove with sirens blazing, but by the time they arrived, Bradley had gathered a small crowd. He stood on the sidewalk, technically not violating the restraining order that kept him 500 feet from Marlene, looking haggard but playing the victim with Oscar-worthy commitment. "I loved Marlene Novak with everything I had," he was saying to the cameras. "Yes, I had a moment of weakness with Kira. What man hasn't been tempted? But to destroy my entire life, to fabricate evidence, to turn my own child against me. That's enough." Detective Harbour stepped forward, but Bradley wasn't technically breaking any laws. Freedom of speech, even for accused criminals, was still protected. "There she is," Bradley pointed as Marlene exited the police car. "The woman who seduced me, stole my business strategies, and then destroyed me when I tried to leave her for someone else. She's not a victim, she's a black widow." The reporters turned their cameras on Marlene, shouting questions. "Is it true you planned this from the beginning? Did you know about the pregnancy when you humiliated him? How do you respond to claims you fabricated evidence?" Marlene stood straight, her mother's strength flowing through her. She thought of Donovan's advice from their last coffee meeting. Never defend. Only attack with truth. "Bradley Stallone broke into my office last night and destroyed it," she said clearly, making sure every camera caught her words. "He also broke into Kira Ingrid's apartment and left threatening messages. He's violated his bail conditions and his restraining order. He's stalked, threatened, and attempted to intimidate witnesses in a federal case. This isn't a press conference, it's a crime in progress." "Lies!" Bradley screamed, but his composure was cracking. "You took everything from me, my money, my reputation, my father's respect, my child. The child isn't yours." Kira's voice cut through the chaos. She stood behind Marlene, having arrived from the hospital, her face pale but determined. "I lied about the timeline to hurt Marlene. The baby is from a one-night stand, 2 weeks before I started the affair with you. The DNA test proved it yesterday." The crowd went silent. Bradley's face went from red to white to purple in the span of seconds. "You lying bitch!" He lunged toward Kira, but Detective Harbour and 2 officers tackled him to the ground. "You're all lying. This is conspiracy. I'll kill you all." As they cuffed him, Bradley's mask finally slipped completely. The charming millionaire was gone, replaced by what he'd always been underneath, a violent narcissist who couldn't accept that his game was over. "Bradley Stallone, you're under arrest for violating bail conditions, making terroristic threats, breaking and entering, and vandalism," Detective Harbour recited as they dragged him to the police car. "Your bail is revoked. You'll be held until trial." The reporters scrambled to capture every second, and Marlene knew this footage would play on every news channel for days. But she didn't care about the optics anymore. She cared about safety, justice, and rebuilding. Kira stood beside her, both of them watching Bradley being driven away. "I'm sorry," Kira said quietly, "for everything. For lying about the pregnancy to hurt you both, for the affair, for the betrayal." "Why tell the truth now?" "Because I'm tired of lies. They've cost me everything, my friends, my reputation, my self-respect. At least with the truth, I can start over." Marlene considered the woman who'd been her best friend, then her worst enemy, and now stood in some liminal space between. "We'll never be friends again." "I know. But I don't wish you harm. Get help, Kira. Get therapy. Figure out why you needed to destroy something good to feel valuable." Kira nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away. Marlene knew they'd probably never speak again, and that was okay. Some bridges once burned were meant to stay ash. Donovan appeared at her elbow, having pushed through the crowd. "You okay?" "Getting there," Marlene admitted. "My office is destroyed, my ex is completely unhinged, and this is going to dominate the news cycle again. But yeah, I'm okay." "Come on," he guided her away from the cameras. "Eleanor, My mother, she has a restoration company that owes her a favor. They'll have your office perfect by tomorrow, and I have something that might cheer you up." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $3 million. "What is this?" "The first distribution from the Stallone asset forfeiture. The FBI froze everything, but the court ruled you're entitled to damages for the theft of your father's intellectual property. This is just the beginning. Bradley stole from you, but the law is going to make you whole." Marlene stared at the check. More money than she'd ever seen at once. "It's not about the money. I know it's about justice, but the money doesn't hurt." As they walked toward his car, away from the chaos and cameras, Donovan asked, "Did you mean what you said to Kira? About getting help?" "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment," Marlene replied. "Even Kira, even Bradley, though he'll have to find his redemption in a federal cell. You're more forgiving than I would be." "Not forgiving, just tired of carrying anger. It's heavy, and I have a business to rebuild, a life to live." She looked at him. "A jazz festival to attend with a friend this weekend." He smiled. "About that. Fair warning, I bought us VIP passes. We're talking backstage access, artist meet and greets, the whole experience." "Donovan, that's too much." "It's not a date," he said quickly. "It's two friends who've been through hell celebrating the fact that we're still standing. Besides, my mother would kill me if I didn't show you a good time. She's convinced you're going to be her daughter-in-law someday." Marlene laughed, surprising herself with how genuine it felt. "Our mothers are not subtle, not even a little bit, but they mean well." As they drove away from the scene of Bradley's final public meltdown, Marlene felt something shift inside her. The worst was over. Bradley was going to prison. Kira was out of her life. The truth was public and undeniable. Now came the harder part, learning to trust again, to build again, to love again. But for the first time in 6 weeks, she thought she might actually be capable of it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Saw the news. Bradley looked pathetic. You looked powerful. Dinner Sunday? Donovan's invited if you want." Marlene typed back, "We'll be there. And Mom, thank you. For everything. For never giving up on protecting me even when I pushed you away. That's what mothers do, baby. We see the wolves even when our daughters only see princes. Now let that nice Westbrook boy take you somewhere that doesn't involve police tape." Marlene smiled, looking at Donovan as he navigated Atlanta traffic with easy confidence. Maybe her mother had been right about more than just Bradley. Maybe she'd been right about everything. Chapter 6. The Legal Battle. The federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta had become Marlene's second home 2 months after the wedding disaster, its marble halls and wood-paneled rooms now as familiar as her own office, which had been restored to perfection thanks to Donovan's connections, but still carried the ghost of Bradley's rage. Today's hearing was supposed to be routine, a motion to dismiss filed by Sterling Stallone's army of lawyers, claiming insufficient evidence and prosecutorial misconduct. But Marlene had learned that nothing involving the Stallones was ever routine. They fought with money and influence the way generals fought with armies, throwing resources at problems until they disappeared. She sat in the gallery between her mother and Donovan, watching Bradley enter in shackles and an orange jumpsuit that had replaced his Italian suits. 6 weeks in federal detention had stripped away his polish. His hair had grown out, showing grey roots she'd never known existed. His shoulders hunched forward, the confident posture gone. But his eyes still held that dangerous gleam when they found her in the crowd, a predator temporarily caged but not tamed. "All rise," the bailiff announced. "The Honorable Judge Constance Meridian presiding." Judge Meridian, a formidable black woman in her 60s, had a reputation for seeing through legal theatrics. Sterling Stallone's lead attorney, Harrison Blackwood, a man who'd successfully defended senators and CEOs, was about to learn that his usual tactics wouldn't work here. Mr. Blackwood, Judge Meridian began without preamble, I've reviewed your motion. You claim the evidence against your client was obtained illegally. Explain. Blackwood stood, his $1,000 suit impeccable. Your Honor, Ms. Novak recorded my client without his knowledge in a private setting. Georgia is a one-party consent state, but the recording was made with the intent to entrap. Objection. Federal Prosecutor Diana Chen interrupted. The defendant wasn't entrapped into confessing to crimes. He was recorded bragging about crimes he'd already committed. Sustained, Judge Meridian ruled. Continue, Ms. Chen. Diana Chen was everything Marlene had hoped for in a prosecutor. Brilliant, relentless, and genuinely committed to justice rather than just winning. She'd taken on the Stallone case personally after learning about Jennifer Huang, her college roommate's cousin. Your Honor, we have new evidence to present. With the court's permission, I'd like to call Lenora Stallone to the stand. The courtroom erupted. Sterling Stallone shot to his feet. That's impossible! She's dead! Apparently not, Judge Meridian observed dryly. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Stallone Sr. out if he has another outburst. Ms. Chen, proceed. The doors opened, and a woman entered who made everyone gasp. Lenora Stallone looked like a ghost, thin, scarred, but very much alive. She walked with a slight limp, her eyes never leaving Bradley, who had gone white as paper. Please state your name for the record, Diana Chen began after Lenora was sworn in. Lenora Marie Stallone. I was married to Bradley Stallone from 2018 to 2020, though he told everyone I died in 2020. Can you explain what actually happened? Lenora's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. Bradley tried to kill me. He'd been poisoning me slowly with mercury for months, making me sick, making everyone think I was having a mental breakdown. When that didn't work fast enough, he staged a car accident, ran me off the road into Lake Lanier. Marlene felt Donovan's hand find hers, squeezing gently. She'd known Bradley was dangerous, but this was beyond what she'd imagined. How did you survive? Diana Chen asked. A fisherman pulled me out. I had amnesia for months, couldn't remember who I was. When my memory returned, I was terrified. Bradley had all the money, all the power, so I stayed hidden, built a new identity. I've been living as Sarah Winters in Nashville for 4 years. What made you come forward now? Lenora finally looked at Marlene. I saw the wedding video. I saw another black woman almost become what I was supposed to be, dead. I couldn't let him do it again. Bradley's attorney tried to object, but Judge Meridian silenced him with a look. Ms. Stallone, do you have proof of these allegations? Diana Chen asked. I have medical records showing mercury poisoning. I have the mechanic's report showing my brake lines were cut. And I have this. She pulled out a phone. Bradley thought he destroyed my old phone in the accident. He didn't know I backed everything up to the cloud, including voice memos where he discussed his plans with his father. The prosecution played the recordings. Bradley's voice, younger but unmistakably his, discussing how to make Lenora's death look natural. Sterling's voice advising patience, suggesting mercury because it mimicked mental illness. The courtroom sat in horrified silence as father and son planned murder like a business transaction. You're lying! Bradley screamed, trying to stand despite his shackles. That's not me! That's AI! Deep fake! She's making it up! Mr. Stallone, control your client or he'll be removed, Judge Meridian warned. But Bradley was beyond control. She was crazy. She tried to kill herself. I saved her. Marlene, baby, you have to believe me. This is all lies. They're all conspiring against me. Marlene stood, unable to stay silent. The only conspiracy here is the one you and your father have been running for years. Jennifer Huang, Amanda Morrison, Lenora, almost me. How many women have to die or disappear before you admit what you are? Marlene, please. You told Kira you loved me while planning to kill me. You stood at our altar knowing you'd already decided how to dispose of me when I was no longer useful. You're not a businessman, Bradley. You're a serial killer who uses marriage instead of a weapon. Judge Meridian gavelled for order, but the damage was done. Bradley's mask had shattered completely, and everyone could see the monster underneath. The hearing continued with more evidence. Financial records showing Bradley had stolen over $30 million from his victims, medical records from Amanda Morrison's psychiatric hold that showed signs of poisoning, a suspicious life insurance policy on Marlene that Bradley had tried to take out a month before the wedding. During a recess, Sterling Stallone approached Marlene in the hallway. Donovan immediately stepped between them, but the older man looked defeated rather than threatening. "I didn't know about Lenora," he said quietly. "The murder, I mean. I thought she really died in an accident. I helped him cover up the financial crimes. Yes, but murder." "You gave him the idea to use mercury," Marlene reminded him coldly. "You might not have known about Lenora specifically, but you knew what your son was capable of, and you enabled it." Sterling's shoulders sagged. "I created a monster trying to build a legacy. Everything I built is destroyed. The FBI seized all my assets this morning. 40 years of building an empire, gone." "Good," Celeste said, appearing at Marlene's side. "Your empire was built on the bones of good people. James Westbrook, my husband's patents, how many others? You and your son deserve everything that's coming." When court resumed, Diana Chen delivered her closing argument. "Bradley Stallone is not just a con man or a thief. He's a predator who specifically targeted successful women of color, believing they would be less likely to be believed, less likely to receive justice. He was wrong. Today we have the chance to show that justice doesn't discriminate, that wealth and privilege cannot buy immunity from consequences." Harrison Blackwood tried to argue for mental illness, temporary insanity, crimes of passion. But Judge Meridian had heard enough. "I'm denying the motion to dismiss," she ruled. "Furthermore, based on the evidence presented today, I'm adding charges of attempted murder in the first degree for the attacks on Lenora Stallone and conspiracy to commit murder for the planned attack on Marlene Novak. Bail is revoked permanently. The defendant will remain in custody until trial." As Bradley was dragged out, he locked eyes with Marlene one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed. But it was. At least this chapter was. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Marlene had prepared a statement. Today, justice took a step forward. "But this isn't just about me or Bradley Stallone. This is about every woman who's been told she's crazy when she senses danger, every victim who's been silenced by power and money. Lenora Stallone's courage in coming forward saved my life and possibly the lives of Bradley's future victims. We owe her everything." Lenora stood beside her, no longer hiding. "I lost 4 years of my life to fear. But seeing Marlene's strength, seeing her refuse to be a victim, gave me the courage to reclaim my story. Bradley Stallone tried to erase me. Today, I erased his power over me." As they walked to Donovan's car, Marlene's phone rang. It was the FBI. "Ms. Novak, this is Agent Harrison. We just arrested Sterling Stallone. Turns out Lenora's recordings included evidence of 3 other murders he helped cover up over the years. The Stallone empire is officially dead." Marlene ended the call and shared the news with the group. Celeste pulled her into a hug. "Your father would be so proud. You didn't just survive, baby. You brought down an entire criminal enterprise." "We brought it down," Marlene corrected, looking at each of them. Her mother, who never stopped protecting her, Donovan, who'd been gathering evidence for years, Lenora, who'd found the courage to return from the dead, Diana Chen, who was ensuring justice was served. "Dinner," Donovan suggested. "I think we've earned a celebration." "Somewhere with good wine," Lenora added. "I haven't had a proper drink in 4 years. Too afraid someone would recognize me at a restaurant." As they walked together toward a new chapter, Marlene realized that Bradley had been wrong about one thing. He'd said she'd never find anyone who loved her like he did. Thank God for that. His version of love was possession, control, and ultimately destruction. What she'd found instead, in her mother's fierce protection, in Donovan's patient support, in the solidarity of survivors like Lenora, was something far more valuable. Genuine care without conditions, support without ownership, love without fear. The legal battle would continue for months, but the war was already won. Bradley Stallone would never hurt another woman again. Chapter 7. The Quiet Support. 3 months after the wedding disaster, Marlene's business had not just recovered but exploded with success, though she suspected the $20 million settlement from the Stallone estate that had been fast-tracked through the courts had less to do with her newfound prosperity than Donovan Westbrook's quiet influence behind the scenes. She discovered his first intervention by accident. Waverly had mentioned offhandedly that the Pemberton wedding, a society event that would cement Novak Events as Atlanta's premier planning company, had specifically requested Marlene after that lovely Mr. Westbrook had sung her praises at the country club. When pressed, Marlene learned Donovan had been systematically countering every piece of poison Bradley had tried to spread from his jail cell, never taking credit, never mentioning it to her. "You didn't have to do that," she told him over coffee at their usual spot, a quiet cafe that had become their Thursday morning tradition. Donovan stirred his black coffee thoughtfully. "You're right, I didn't have to. I wanted to. There's a difference." "Why?" "Because you deserve to succeed on your merit, not fail because of Bradley's lies. I just made sure people knew the truth." It was always like this with him: support without strings, help without expectation of gratitude. So different from Bradley's transactional version of love that Marlene sometimes struggled to accept it as real. Her phone buzzed with an alert from her lawyer. Bradley's trial date had been set for next month. The reality of facing him again made her coffee taste bitter. "You okay?" Donovan asked, reading her expression with the ease of someone who'd been paying attention. "The trial. It's real now. I'll have to testify. See him again. Relive all of it in public. You don't have to do it alone. I know Diana Chen is an excellent prosecutor. That's not what I meant." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers, asking permission without words. When she didn't pull away, he covered her hand with his. "I'll be there, every day of the trial, whatever you need." The warmth of his touch was nothing like Bradley's possessive grip. This was an offer, not a demand. "Your company won't appreciate you taking that much time off." He smiled. "I resigned yesterday." Marlene nearly knocked over her coffee. "What? Donovan, why? You loved that job." "I loved the power it gave me to fight the Stallones. That fight's over. I've been thinking about what's next, and I realize something. I've spent 5 years living for revenge, investigating my father's death, building a case against the people who destroyed him. But that's not living. That's just existing with purpose. So what's next? I'm starting my own investment firm, specifically focused on helping Black-owned businesses secure funding and navigate the financial world. Your success with the settlement money, turning it into business growth instead of just sitting on it, that inspired me." Marlene studied him, this man who'd upended his entire life partially because of her example. That's a big risk. Everything worth doing is. Besides, he squeezed her hand gently before letting go. "My mother has been nagging me about taking risks for the right reasons instead of revenge. She seems to think someone in my life might be worth taking positive risks for." The implication hung between them, unspoken but clear. 3 months of friendship had built something Marlene wasn't quite ready to name, but couldn't deny existed. Before she could respond, her phone rang. "Celeste." "Baby, you need to come to the house. Now bring Donovan." The urgency in her mother's voice had them both moving immediately. During the drive, worst-case scenarios ran through Marlene's head. Had Bradley somehow gotten out? Had Sterling made bail? They found Celeste in her living room with Lenora Stallone and a woman Marlene didn't recognize, elderly, frail, but with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is Dorothy Huang," Celeste said. "Jennifer's grandmother." Marlene's breath caught. Jennifer Huang, Bradley's first known victim, the one who died in a car accident that everyone now knew was murder. "Mrs. Huang," Marlene began, but the elderly woman held up her hand. "I've come to thank you," she said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. "For 5 years I've known my granddaughter was murdered. No one believed me. The police said I was a grieving grandmother seeing conspiracies where there were none. But you proved it. You gave my Jennifer justice." She pulled out a worn envelope. Jennifer wrote this a week before she died. She was going to leave Bradley, but she wanted whoever came after her to know the truth. I think she knew what might happen. Marlene took the letter with trembling hands. Jennifer's handwriting was neat, careful. "To whoever reads this, Bradley Stallone is not what he seems. He's systematically stealing my father's coding innovations, has isolated me from family, and I've been getting sick in ways that make no sense. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Please don't let him do this to another woman. Jennifer Huang." "She knew," Lenora whispered, "just like we all eventually knew. But she didn't get the chance to escape." Dorothy Huang looked at each woman in the room. "You survived. You fought. You won. My Jennifer would be so proud." After Dorothy left, the 4 of them sat in heavy silence. Marlene found herself looking at these women, her mother, Lenora, herself, all survivors of the Stallone family's destruction in different ways. "We need to do something," Marlene said suddenly. "A foundation, maybe. For women like Jennifer who sense danger but don't have the resources or support to escape. The Jennifer Huang Foundation for Women's Safety," Lenora suggested immediately. "I have money from my settlement, 20 million that I don't need to hide anymore." "I can provide the business structure," Donovan offered. "Pro bono, of course." Celeste smiled, the strategic look Marlene recognized from childhood. "And I can provide the network. 25 years of teaching means I know people in every field. We can create an underground railroad for women in danger from men like Bradley." As they planned, Marlene felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about transformation, taking the worst thing that had happened to her and turning it into something that could save others. Later, as Donovan drove her home, he said quietly, "You're extraordinary, you know that. I'm just trying to make sense of it all, to make Jennifer's death mean something." "That's what I mean. Bradley tried to destroy you, and instead of just surviving, you're building something to help others. You took your pain and weaponized it for good." He pulled up to her building, but didn't immediately unlock the doors. "Marlene, I need to tell you something." Her heart rate spiked. After Bradley, serious conversations terrified her. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "I've been trying not to. Trying to just be your friend because I know you're not ready. But if I'm starting over, being honest about what I want from life, then I need to be honest about this too. Donovan, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that when I show up for you, it's not obligation or pity or even friendship, really. It's because I love you. I'll wait as long as you need, even if that's forever. But you deserve to know the truth." Marlene sat in stunned silence. Love. Real love. Not Bradley's possessive obsession or Kira's jealous betrayal. This was something else entirely. Patient, selfless, honest. "I don't know if I can ever—" "You don't have to know. Just don't disappear on me, okay? We can stay exactly as we are for as long as you need. I just couldn't keep pretending my feelings were purely platonic." She looked at him. This man who'd protected her before he knew her, who'd helped her without asking for credit, who'd just upended his entire life to build something meaningful. "The trial starts in a month," she said carefully. After it's over, after Bradley is sentenced and this chapter is closed, ask me again." Hope bloomed in his eyes. "That's not a no. It's not a yes either. It's a maybe, a probably if I'm honest. But I need to close this chapter first. I need to stand in that courtroom and face him down and know that I'm completely free before I can think about building something new. Then that's what we'll do. 1 month, the trial, then we'll talk about us." As she got out of the car, she turned back. "Donovan, thank you. For the honesty, for the patience, for everything." "Always," he said simply, and she believed him. That night, Marlene sat in her apartment looking at Jennifer's letter, Lenora's testimony notes, the plans for the foundation they were building. 3 months ago, she'd been a bride betrayed. Now she was becoming something else, an advocate, a survivor, a woman who might eventually trust love again. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bradley's lawyer. "My client wants to make a deal. He'll confess to everything in exchange for medium security instead of maximum. He's willing to allocate his remaining assets to your foundation." She forwarded it to Diana Chen with 2 words. "No deal." Bradley Stallone didn't get to negotiate his way out of consequences. The trial would happen. Justice would be complete. And then maybe Marlene could finally start living instead of just surviving. Chapter 8. The Other Victims. The conference room at Diana Chen's office had been transformed into a war room 4 months after the wedding, with evidence boards covering every wall, testimony transcripts stacked like monuments to pain, and 5 women who'd never thought they'd meet sitting around a polished table that reflected their faces like ghosts of who they used to be. Marlene studied the other women Bradley had targeted, each representing a different chapter in his evolution as a predator. Besides herself and Lenora, there was Amanda Morrison from Portland, via video link from the psychiatric facility where she was still recovering. Tonya Richards from Chicago, who'd lost her tech startup to Bradley's manipulations 3 years ago. And Zooey, surprisingly, Sofia Castellano from Miami, who'd managed to escape Bradley before he could spring his trap, but had been too terrified to come forward until now. Diana Chen stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding despite her petite frame. "Ladies, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy, but your united testimony will ensure Bradley Stallone never hurts another woman again." "How many years are we talking?" Tonya asked, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. She'd flown in from Chicago that morning, leaving her 3 children with their grandmother. Bradley had destroyed her marriage along with her business, convincing her husband she was having an affair while he slowly drained her company's accounts. With all charges combined, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, theft, we're looking at consecutive sentences totaling approximately 150 years. He'll die in prison. "Good," Amanda said from the screen, her voice thin but determined. The psychiatric hold Bradley had orchestrated had lasted 6 months, during which she'd lost her company, her credibility, and nearly her sanity. "But I want more than just prison. I want the world to know what he is." Sophia spoke for the first time, her Miami accent thick with emotion. "I was the lucky one. I ran before he could destroy me completely. But I've been looking over my shoulder for 2 years, afraid he'd come after me for knowing too much." "What made you run?" Marlene asked gently. "My grandmother. She was visiting from Cuba, didn't speak much English, but she took one look at Bradley and said in Spanish, 'That man has the eyes of someone who's killed before.' I laughed it off, but she was so serious, so scared. She'd seen enough evil in her life to recognize it. That night, I went through his phone while he slept, found photos of Jennifer Huang, notes about mercury poisoning, research on how to make deaths look accidental. I packed a bag and disappeared." "You never went to the police?" Diana asked, taking notes. "A Cuban woman with no proof accusing a rich white man of planning murder. Who would have believed me? I just ran and prayed he'd find another target and forget about me." Sophia looked at Marlene. I'm sorry you became that target. When I saw your wedding video, I threw up. I knew what he'd planned for you. Lenora reached across the table, taking Sophia's hand. You survived. That's what matters. We all survived. The door opened, and Donovan entered with coffee and files. He distributed both quietly, his presence unobtrusive but supportive. When he reached Marlene, he squeezed her shoulder gently, a reminder that she wasn't alone. I have something, Tonya said suddenly, pulling out her phone. I never told anyone this because I was too ashamed. But Bradley recorded us, being intimate. He said it was for us, for when we were apart. But after he destroyed my life, he sent the videos to my husband, my board of directors, everyone, said I was a whore who deserved what I got. The room went silent with rage. Diana's pen snapped in her hand. He distributed revenge porn? That's a federal crime now, Donovan said quietly, the kind that adds decades to sentences. I have the emails he sent with the videos, Tonya continued, tears streaming down her face. I kept everything, too humiliated to show anyone, but if it helps put him away forever. It will, Diana assured her. You're brave for sharing this. All of you are. Amanda cleared her throat from the video screen. He did the same to me. The videos were part of how he convinced everyone I was having a mental breakdown, a sex addict who needed intervention. My own parents believed him. Marlene felt sick. She thought about the intimate moments she'd shared with Bradley, wondered if somewhere there were recordings waiting to surface. The violation felt fresh, even months later. There's more, Lenora said quietly. I've been investigating with Donovan's help. We found 3 other women, Natasha in Seattle, Carmen in Phoenix, and Jade in Houston. They won't come forward publicly, but they've provided affidavits. Bradley's pattern goes back 12 years, to when he was 20. His first victim was his college girlfriend. She committed suicide after he destroyed her reputation with deepfake pornography before deepfakes were even widely known. The weight of Bradley's evil settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. This wasn't just a conman or a thief. This was a serial predator who'd refined his methods over more than a decade. We're going to bury him, Diana said, with cold determination. Every charge, every victim, every crime. By the time I'm done, Bradley Stallone's name will be synonymous with predator. No woman will ever fall for his act again, because his face will be on every warning poster in America. A knock at the door interrupted them. Diana's assistant entered, looking disturbed. Ms. Chen, there's been an incident at the Federal Detention Center. Bradley Stallone was attacked by another inmate. Marlene's heart skipped. Is he? He's alive, in the medical ward. But apparently the attacker was the brother of Natasha from Seattle. He's in for armed robbery, recognized Bradley from the news, and decided to handle things himself. The women exchanged glances, none of them feeling the sympathy they might have once possessed. Will this delay the trial? Marlene asked Diana. Not if I have anything to say about it. He can attend in a wheelchair if necessary. Justice doesn't wait for convenient recovery times. As the meeting continued, they strategized about the trial. Each woman assigned specific testimony days to create a cascade of evidence that would drown Bradley's defense. Marlene would go last, the culmination of a pattern that started with a college girl's suicide and led to a wedding altar ambush. After the meeting, Donovan walked Marlene to her car. You okay? I keep learning new depths to his evil. Every time I think I understand what he was, I discover something worse. But you're facing it. All of you are. That takes incredible courage. Or desperation. Or anger. I'm not sure which is driving me anymore. He stopped walking, turning to face her. It's courage. Desperation would have you hiding. Anger alone would have you seeking revenge outside the law. This, building a foundation, uniting victims, ensuring legal justice, this is courage. 4 weeks until the trial, she said, changing the subject from compliments she didn't know how to accept. Are you ready? The question is, are you ready? You'll have to see him, sit in the same room, relive the worst moments of your life in public. I'll be ready. These women, Lenora, Amanda, Tanya, Sophia, all the others who can't come forward, they deserve to see him fall. Jennifer Huang deserves justice from beyond the grave, and I deserve to look him in the eye as they read the verdict. And after? Donovan asked carefully, reminding her of their conversation from a month ago. After we talk about us, about the future, about building something real on the ashes of what was fake. He smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made her remember what genuine affection looked like. I'm going to hold you to that. That night, Marlene sat with the other victims' stories spread before her. Each woman had been chosen carefully, successful, isolated from support systems in some way, possessing something Bradley wanted. But more than that, each had been strong enough to interest him. He didn't prey on weakness. He was attracted to strength because breaking it fed his ego. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, then saw it was from the Federal Detention Center. Against her better judgment, she opened it. It was from Bradley, somehow sent from the medical ward. You think you've won, but you've just made me famous. Every man in America will know my name, study my methods. I'm going to inspire a generation. You didn't defeat me, Marlene. You made me immortal. She forwarded it to Diana immediately, then deleted it from her phone. But his words lingered. Was he right? By exposing him so publicly, had they created a blueprint for other predators? Then she thought of the foundation they were building, the warning systems they were putting in place, the education programs Celeste was developing. For every predator who might learn from Bradley, they would teach 100 women to recognize the signs, to trust their instincts, to run before it was too late. She texted the group chat Diana had created for the victims. Bradley sent me a message trying to scare me. Don't let him win. We're stronger together than he ever was alone. The responses came immediately. Lenora, he's desperate, scared, good. Tanya, let him rot in his fear like we rotted in ours. Sophia, my grandmother says evil always thinks it's winning right before it falls. Amanda, 4 weeks. Then we never have to think about him again. But Marlene knew better. They would always carry Bradley with them, not as a victor but as a scar that proved they'd survived. The trial wouldn't erase the past, but it would lock away the monster and maybe, just maybe, let them all finally start healing. Chapter 9. The Final Gambit. The FBI field office in downtown Atlanta felt like a fortress at 2 in the morning, 5 months after the wedding disaster. But Marlene knew that no amount of federal protection could guarantee safety from a desperate man with nothing left to lose. Bradley had been released from the medical ward 3 days ago, and his lawyer had made an unusual request through Diana Chen. He wanted to meet with Marlene alone, claiming he had information about other victims that he would only share with her. No lawyers, no recordings allowed. The FBI had immediately seen it as an opportunity, though Marlene recognized it for what it was, Bradley's last attempt at control. Agent Harrison stood before her, holding the wire that would be taped to her ribs. You don't have to do this. We have enough evidence to convict him without a confession. But not enough to guarantee life without parole, Marlene countered. She had dressed carefully for this meeting. A black suit that projected power, minimal jewelry except for her grandmother's pearl necklace that had survived the wedding day, and the red lipstick her mother had taught her to wear as armor. Donovan paced the room like a caged animal. He had argued against this plan for hours, but Marlene's determination had won. If he touches you, if he even moves aggressively, the agents will intervene, Diana assured him, though her own expression showed concern. We'll have eyes on her the entire time. The meeting room has cameras, panic buttons, everything. Everything except the ability to stop a man who has nothing left to lose from doing something desperate, Celeste said from her chair in the corner. She had insisted on being present, her maternal instincts overriding FBI protocols. Baby, you've already won. You don't need to give him this. Yes, I do. Marlene stood still as Agent Harrison's colleague, Agent Martinez, taped the wire to her skin. Not for the case. For me. I need to face him one last time, not as his victim, but as his equal. I need him to know that I'm not afraid of him anymore. The truth was more complex. She was terrified, but not of Bradley himself. She was afraid of what seeing him might trigger, what memories might resurface, what doubts about her own judgment might creep back in. But courage, Donovan had taught her, wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. At 2:47 a.m., they drove to the federal holding facility where Bradley had requested the meeting. The timing was his choice, a power play to disrupt her sleep, to meet when she might be vulnerable. He did not know that Marlene had not slept properly in 5 months anyway, that 3 in the morning had become her most productive hour, when she worked on the foundation paperwork and corresponded with victims in different time zones. The meeting room was sterile, windowless, with fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly. Bradley sat at a metal table, his hands cuffed to a chain around his waist. The orange jumpsuit hung on his frame. He had lost weight, muscle mass, the commanding presence that had once fooled so many, but his eyes remained calculating, scanning her as she entered. Marlene. He said her name like a prayer and a curse combined. You look beautiful. Success suits you. She sat across from him, maintaining eye contact. You wanted to talk. You have 15 minutes. All business now? Remember when you used to smile when you saw me? When you used to... 14 minutes and 30 seconds. His facade cracked slightly. I know about the wire. They think I'm stupid, but I know you're recording this. Marlene kept her expression neutral, though her heart raced. If he knew about the wire, this could all be for nothing. Bradley leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. But I don't care. I want you to record this. I want everyone to know the truth. Which version of the truth? You seem to have so many. The real truth. That I loved you. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Marlene forced herself not to react, not to laugh at the absurdity or rage at the audacity. You don't destroy people you love, Bradley. No! Then why are you destroying me? His voice turned pleading, the master manipulator pulling out his final performance. We could have been perfect together. Your business sense, my connections. We could have built an empire. On the bones of how many women? Jennifer Huang? Amanda Morrison? Lenora, who you tried to murder? Lenora was weak. The mask slipped completely, revealing the monster beneath. She found out about the patents I was developing from James Westbrook's research. She was going to expose me. I had no choice. There it was, a confession to attempted murder, captured on the wire. And Jennifer. Jennifer was practice. His voice turned cold, clinical. I needed to know if I could do it, if I could take a life and walk away clean. She was so trusting, even as I poisoned her. Even as I cut her brake lines, she texted me that she loved me. Marlene's stomach turned, but she pressed on. Amanda? Amanda figured it out too quickly. Smart woman, too smart. The psychiatric hold was elegant, though. Make everyone think she's crazy, and no one believes her truth. She's still in that facility, isn't she? Still screaming about me while they medicate her into silence? She's recovering. She'll testify at your trial. Bradley laughed, a sound devoid of humor. They all will, won't they? My conquests, parading their victim status for sympathy. But they're not victims, Marlene. They're participants. They wanted what I offered. Wealth, status, the fantasy of being chosen by someone like me. Someone like you, superior, evolved beyond conventional morality. I gave them the greatest gift, association with greatness, even if briefly. The narcissism was breathtaking, even after everything Marlene knew about him. Is that what you gave me? Association with greatness? I gave you more. I gave you purpose. Look at you now, famous, wealthy from the settlement, building your little foundation. You should thank me. Without me, you'd still be planning mediocre weddings for mediocre people. Without you, I'd still trust people. I'd still have my best friend. I'd still believe in love. Kira was never your friend. She told me about every insecurity you shared with her, every doubt. Did you know she's kept journals about you since college, documenting every time you succeeded where she failed? She came to me, Marlene, not the other way around, offered to help me destroy you for a chance to take your place. The revelation hit harder than expected. Marlene had processed Kira's betrayal, but learning it had been premeditated for years added another layer of pain. Why tell me this? Because I want you to know that everyone in your life will eventually betray you. Your mother, investigating your fiancé behind your back. Donovan, using you to get revenge for his father. Even your precious victim support group, they're using your story for their own gain. No, Marlene said firmly. They're surviving. We're all surviving what you did to us. What I did? I showed you the truth about humanity. People are selfish, weak, disposable. I just had the courage to act on it. You had the sickness to act on it. There's a difference. Bradley's eyes flashed with rage. You think you're better than me? You destroyed my life just as thoroughly as I planned to destroy yours. The only difference is you had help. The difference is I was defending myself. You were hunting. Semantics. He leaned back, studying her. Do you want to know why I really chose you? Marlene waited, knowing he would tell her regardless. Your father's patents were valuable, yes, but it was more than that. You reminded me of my mother before Sterling broke her. Strong, independent, successful. I wanted to break something that reminded me of her, to prove I could do what he did but better. The confession was unexpected, a glimpse into the psychology that had created the monster. Your mother left when you were 12, Marlene remembered from the investigation files. She didn't leave. Sterling destroyed her systematically until she had no choice but to run. He taught me everything, how to identify weakness, how to exploit trust, how to make someone question their own reality, but he was sloppy. His victims escaped. Mine didn't. Lenora escaped. Sophia escaped. I escaped. Did you? You're here at 3 in the morning talking to me. I'm in your head, Marlene. I'll always be in your head. Every time Donovan touches you, you'll wonder if he's playing a longer game. Every time you make a friend, you'll wonder when they'll betray you. I've poisoned your ability to trust forever. That's a murder that doesn't require death. The words were designed to wound, and they found their mark. But Marlene had learned something in 5 months of therapy and support groups. Truth could be acknowledged without being accepted as permanent. You're right, she said, surprising him. You did poison my ability to trust blindly. But blind trust was what made me vulnerable to you. Now I trust with verification. I love with boundaries. I build relationships with foundations instead of fantasies. You didn't break me, Bradley. You refined me. Pretty words, but we both know the nightmares haven't stopped. The panic attacks when someone moves too quickly. The way you check locks 3 times before bed. How do you know? Marlene stopped, realizing. You have someone watching me. Bradley smiled, the expression grotesque in the harsh lighting. I have admirers, men who understand what I was trying to achieve. They send me updates, photos. You should see the one of you crying in your car outside the courthouse, beautiful in your vulnerability. Marlene's hand moved to the panic button under the table, but she didn't press it. Not yet. Give me names. Why would I do that? Because you're proud of it. Because you want me to know how far your influence reaches. True, he considered. Marcus Webb, investment banker, lives in your building. Thomas Chen works at your coffee shop. David Morrison, no relation to Amanda, teaches at Emory. They all see what I saw, a world where women like you need to be reminded of their place. Marlene memorized every name, knowing the FBI was recording everything. They're going to prison too, you know. Stalking, conspiracy, harassment. You've just signed their arrest warrants. Bradley shrugged. They knew the risks. They believe in the cause of destroying successful women, the cause of maintaining natural order. Men lead, women follow. It's biology, evolution. You've disrupted that order, but nature always corrects itself. Is that what you'll tell yourself in prison, that you're a victim of natural correction? His composure finally shattered completely. I'll tell myself that I almost had it all, that if you hadn't been such a frigid bitch who snooped where you shouldn't have, we'd be married now. I'd have your father's patents, your business connections, your body when I wanted it, and in a few years when you'd outlived your usefulness, you'd have had an accident like the others, and I'd have moved on to the next target with your fortune added to mine. There it was. Full confession to planning her murder, recorded clearly on the wire. But I did snoop. I did find out, and now you'll die in prison instead of in a penthouse. Bradley lunged forward as much as his chains allowed, his face contorted with rage. I should have killed you that morning in the hotel. Should have strangled you when you walked into that suite. But you didn't. Because you're a coward who kills through poison and staged accidents, not face to face. You're not a predator, Bradley. You're a parasite. The guards rushed in as Bradley struggled against his restraints, screaming obscenities and threats. As they dragged him away, he managed one last coherent sentence. Check your brake lines, Marlene. My admirers are everywhere. Outside the facility, Marlene collapsed into Donovan's arms, the adrenaline finally crashing. Diana Chen was already on the phone with the FBI, arranging arrests for the men Bradley had named. You did it, Donovan whispered into her hair. You got everything. Full confession to multiple murders, conspiracy, future plans. He'll never see freedom again. He knew about the wire, Marlene said, still shaking. He wanted to confess. Why? Celeste answered, her voice heavy with understanding. Because he's a narcissist who couldn't bear the thought of being forgotten. He wanted his story told, even if it meant life in prison. In his mind, infamy is better than anonymity. As they drove home, the sun beginning to rise over Atlanta, Marlene thought about Bradley's final threat. His admirers, his influence, his poison spreading even from behind bars. But she also thought about the women who'd united against him, the foundation they were building, the future that existed beyond his shadow. The trial starts tomorrow, Diana said. After this confession, it's really just a formality. He'll plead guilty to avoid the death penalty, take life without parole. Good, Marlene said, meaning it. I want this chapter closed. But she knew, as they all did, that some chapters never fully close. They just become part of your story, scar tissue that reminds you of wounds survived and strength discovered. Bradley would always be part of her history, but he would not define her future. Chapter 10. Justice and New Beginnings. The federal courthouse at 9 a.m. was surrounded by news vans and protesters, 6 months to the day after Marlene had discovered Bradley's betrayal. But inside courtroom 7, there was only the quiet rustle of papers and the weight of impending justice that made the air itself feel heavy with consequence. Bradley Stallone sat at the defendant's table in a suit that no longer fit his diminished frame, his hands shackled, his father notably absent, Sterling having fled to a non-extradition country 3 weeks prior, abandoning his son to face justice alone. The man who had once commanded rooms with his presence now looked like what he truly was, a hollow predator finally defanged. Judge Constance Meridian entered, and the courtroom rose. Marlene stood between her mother and Donovan, feeling the strength of their presence like armor. Behind them sat Lenora, Amanda, on a special pass from her treatment facility, Tonya, Sophia, and 7 other women who had come forward after Bradley's confession went public. The army of his victims had become an army of survivors. "Mr. Stallone," Judge Meridian began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "you have pleaded guilty to 16 counts of fraud, 4 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of murder in the first degree, 23 counts of theft, 8 counts of distributing revenge pornography, and conspiracy to commit murder. Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say?" Bradley stood slowly, turning not to the judge but to Marlene. His eyes held that same possessive gleam that had once masqueraded as love. "I loved you," he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "In my own way, I loved you more than any of them. You were going to be my masterpiece." Before Marlene could respond, Celeste Novak stood up, her voice cutting through the courtroom with maternal fury that had been contained for 6 months. "You don't know what love is, Bradley Stallone. Love protects. It doesn't destroy. Love builds up. It doesn't tear down. You're a parasite who confused possession with affection, control with care. My daughter survived you not because you loved her, but because real love surrounded her. From me, from Donovan, from these brave women who stood with her. You're about to learn what happens when you mistake a strong black woman's grace for weakness." Judge Meridian allowed the moment before continuing. "Mr. Stallone, your crimes represent a pattern of predatory behavior that spans 12 years. You've shown no remorse, only regret at being caught. You've terrorized women, destroyed lives, and ended 2 precious souls who deserved to live." Jennifer Huang was 26. Lenora Stallone, who survived your attempt, lost 4 years of her life to fear. The judge's voice hardened. "I hereby sentence you to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, sentences to run consecutively for each count. You will serve your time in ADX Florence, in solitary confinement for the first 25 years due to the continued threat you pose to others. You will have no access to computers, no ability to communicate with the outside world beyond approved legal correspondence. Your assets have been liquidated and will be distributed among your victims." Bradley's composure finally shattered. "You can't do this. Solitary for 25 years? That's cruel and unusual. I have rights." "Your victims had rights too," Judge Meridian responded coldly. "The right to live without fear, to build their lives without predation, to trust without betrayal. You systematically violated those rights. This sentence is justice, not cruelty. Marshal, remove the defendant." As they dragged Bradley away, he screamed Marlene's name repeatedly, declarations of love mixed with threats, until his voice faded down the corridor and into the silence of his new permanent reality. A concrete cell where his manipulations would echo only off walls that couldn't be charmed or threatened into submission. The courtroom erupted in tears and embraces. Amanda collapsed against Tonya, sobbing with relief. Lenora stood perfectly still, as if afraid movement might shatter the reality that her tormentor was finally gone. Sophia crossed herself and whispered prayers in Spanish. But Marlene felt something different, not relief or joy, but a strange emptiness. The monster was caged, but the space he'd occupied in her life, even as an enemy, was now vacant. Donovan seemed to understand. He took her hand gently. "It's okay to feel lost right now. You've been fighting so long, it's normal to not know what comes after victory." Diana Chen approached them. "There's more. The 3 men Bradley named as his admirers were arrested this morning. Marcus Webb had photographs of you spanning 3 months. Thomas Chen had been poisoning your coffee with mild sedatives, not enough to harm, just to make you feel unstable. David Morrison was planning something worse, but we stopped him in time." The revelation should have terrified Marlene, but instead she felt a surge of power. Even with his network, even with his planning, they had all failed. She had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Marlene had prepared a statement. She stood at the microphones, flanked by the other survivors, and spoke with the clarity that comes from absolute truth. Today, justice was served. But this isn't just about Bradley Stallone. This is about every woman who's been told she's crazy for sensing danger, every victim who's been blamed for their predator's actions. We stand here not as victims, but as proof that survival is possible, that justice, though sometimes slow, does come. The Jennifer Huang Foundation for Women's Safety launches today, funded by the very wealth Bradley stole from his victims. He tried to build an empire on our bones. Instead, we're building a fortress where future women can find safety. The crowd erupted in applause, but Marlene was already walking away, done with the public spectacle of her pain. 6 hours later, 3 p.m. The Novak family church had been transformed with simple elegance, white roses and lilies, candlelight casting warm shadows on the stained glass, and only 50 guests instead of the 300 who'd witnessed her humiliation 6 months ago. But this was perfect, intimate, real, in a way her first wedding had never been. Marlene stood in the preparation room, wearing a simple ivory dress that her grandmother had worn in 1952, altered to fit perfectly. No $10,000 designer gown, no excessive jewelry, just the pearl necklace that had witnessed everything and survived intact. Celeste entered, tears already streaming. "You don't have to do this today, baby. I know it was Donovan's idea to reclaim the date, but—" "It was my idea, Mom," Marlene corrected, taking her mother's hands. 6 months ago, on this exact date, my life exploded. Today, I'm choosing to rebuild it. Bradley doesn't get to own this date forever. And Donovan, are you marrying him because you love him or because I chose him?" Marlene smiled, remembering all the quiet moments of the past 6 months. Donovan bringing coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked. Donovan standing guard while she testified. Donovan building his new company specifically to help women like her protect their assets. Donovan waiting patiently for her to be ready, never pushing, always present. "Both," she admitted. "You chose him before I knew I needed him. But I'm marrying him because somewhere between the coffee dates and court hearings, between the late-night planning sessions for the foundation and Sunday dinners at your house, I fell in love with him. Real love. Not the performance Bradley offered." Celeste kissed her daughter's forehead. "Your father would be so proud. You took the worst thing that could happen and transformed it into purpose." "I learned from the best," Marlene replied, squeezing her mother's hand. The music began. Not the traditional wedding march, but Nina Simone's "Feeling Good," because this was a new dawn, not a traditional union. Marlene walked down the aisle alone, choosing to give herself away rather than be transferred from one protector to another. Donovan stood at the altar in a simple black suit, his eyes bright with tears he didn't try to hide. Beside him stood his mother Eleanor, and surprisingly, Lenora Stallone as a bridesmaid, the woman who'd shared Bradley's name now standing as witness to Marlene choosing a different path. Reverend Thompson, who had been prepared to marry her to Bradley 6 months ago, now spoke different words. "We gather today, not in spite of the past, but because of it." Marlene and Donovan found each other in the darkness and chose to be each other's light. When it came time for vows, Donovan went first, his voice steady and sure. "Marlene, I've loved you since you outbid me for that Miles Davis album 3 years ago. I've loved you through investigation and revelation, through triumph and trial. You asked me once why I helped without asking for anything in return. The answer is simple. Your strength in surviving made me want to be worthy of standing beside you. I promised to never dim your light, to support without suffocating, to love without possessing. You are not mine to own but mine to cherish, and I will spend every day earning the gift of your trust. Marlene felt tears she hadn't cried through 6 months of trauma finally fall freely. When she spoke her vows, her voice carried the power of absolute certainty. Donovan, you showed me that real love doesn't announce itself with grand gestures and hollow promises. It shows up with coffee and quiet support. It builds foundations instead of cages. It celebrates strength instead of trying to break it. 6 months ago, I thought I knew what love was. I was wrong. You taught me that love is patient action, not passionate words. Love is standing guard while someone heals, not rushing them to recover. You waited for me to be ready, and now I am. Ready to build something real, something lasting, something that Bradley could never understand because it's based on equality, not control. I choose you, not because my mother chose you first, but because you chose to be the man worth choosing. The rings? Reverend Thompson asked. Amara stepped forward with 2 simple gold bands. No diamonds, no extravagance, just unbroken circles representing unbroken promises. As they exchanged rings, Marlene noticed movement in the back of the church. Kira stood in the doorway, heavily pregnant now, tears streaming down her face. For a moment their eyes met, betrayer and betrayed, former friends who'd loved and lost each other to a man's manipulation. Marlene nodded once, permission to stay, and Kira slipped into the last pew. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Donovan, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was gentle, respectful, a promise rather than a possession. The small gathering erupted in applause, and Marlene felt the empty space Bradley had left fill with something better, genuine love, community support, and a future built on truth rather than lies. At the reception in Celeste's backyard, surrounded by fairy lights and the people who truly stood by her, Marlene watched Donovan dance with his mother, saw her own mother teaching Lenora to laugh again, observed Amanda and Tonya planning their own recoveries with newfound hope. Diana Chen approached with champagne and news. Bradley was processed into ADX Florence an hour ago. He's in solitary, no windows, no human contact except guards. He'll die there, alone with his narcissism. Good, Marlene said and meant it. Then softer. May he find whatever peace a soul like his can find. As the evening wound down, Donovan found her standing alone by her mother's rose garden, the same roses she'd helped plant as a child while learning that beautiful things could grow from dirt if properly tended. No regrets? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. None, she answered, leaning into his warmth. 6 months ago, I was marrying an illusion. Today, I married reality. Messy, complicated, beautiful reality. Your mother's taking credit, you know. She's telling everyone she orchestrated this whole thing. Marlene laughed, genuine and free. Let her. She saw you before I did, saw through Bradley before I could. Mothers know. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Bradley Stallone begins life sentence in America's toughest prison. She deleted it without reading. That chapter was closed. Ready to go? Donovan asked. They had reservations at a small inn in the mountains. Nothing fancy, just quiet and theirs. Ready, Marlene confirmed, taking his hand. As they drove away, Marlene caught a glimpse of herself in the side mirror, her red lipstick perfect, her grandmother's pearls gleaming, her wedding ring simple and real. The woman looking back wasn't the naive bride from 6 months ago or the warrior who'd taken down a predator. She was something new, a survivor who'd chosen to thrive, a woman who'd learned the difference between performance and truth, a wife who'd married not for fairy tales, but for the beautiful reality of genuine partnership. Bradley Stallone sat in a concrete cell, alone with his delusions. Marlene Westbrook drove toward mountains with a man who loved her strength, not despite it, but because of it. Justice had been served. But more than that, life had been reclaimed.